Hey team, welcome back to The Pillars, the podcast of the 363rd ISR Wing. Here in the studio today with Dr. Jerry.
That's me.
And Tech Sergeant Joe. And I'm Dr. Reed. What are we talking about today, Jerry?
Today we're going to talk about acts of kindness. And a week ago or a couple weeks ago, I sent out a 5 Minutes to Thrive on what it means to be altruistic. And I talked about how there's a number of different benefits from being kind, not just for yourself, but for other people. And I was hoping we could foster a discussion on what those acts of kindness might look like. Because I think a lot of times we think about altruism as these grand gestures. The philanthropist, is that pronounced correctly?
Sounds great.
Philanthropist.
Yeah.
That's how we say it at my house.
Yeah. Who are donating millions of dollars to like cancer research or to build houses for the underprivileged. But it doesn't necessarily need to be that broad or sweeping gesture. It can be just the little things throughout the day, and really those are the ones that can impact us the most, accumulated over time.
You know, you're known for using big words on the podcast, Jerry, and can you unpack altruism a little bit more?
Yes, please.
What does that mean?
So the act of altruism, it's about doing something for somebody else for no other reason than you want to help them. And I've had debates with people before on whether altruism actually exists, because when we do something for somebody else, we usually feel pretty good about it. Mm-hmm. There's like this little burst of dopamine that we get in our reward center that's like, hey, I did good today. I'm a good person. You feel good about yourself. It raises your self-esteem. And so, there's sort of some conjecture as to whether or not there is anything real about altruism. Is it really non-wholly self-serving? Is there anything about it that is, in fact, selfless? Because we are getting benefit of it. But my point of that is, who cares?
Yeah.
I mean, what does it matter, the motivation, if the end outcome or the result is that other people benefit and you benefit as well?
Yeah, I don't think we're going to settle the debate today. So we should probably just get into it.
Yeah, sounds good. Yeah, I know for me, I like to do acts of kindness, but when I receive one is really nice, because sometimes, especially in our career field, when you help so many people, you don't always see them at their best. You hear a lot of really terrible stories that people are going through, their lives, their problems. And so you kind of sometimes lose a little hope in humanity, And so when you have an act of kindness happen to you, I like it. I'm just like, oh, there's hope. There's hope out there.
And the best part about that is that it's unexpected. Mm-hmm. I think we, will oftentimes go out of our way and do little things here and there for our coworkers, for significant others. But to some extent, those have become almost expected just based on our relationship with them and what we've done in the past. I think it's more meaningful when it comes from a complete stranger.
Yeah.
Or when somebody really goes out of their way, like above and beyond, and you didn't see it coming. That's when I think we benefit the most from it.
That's funny that you mentioned complete strangers, and my wife tells this story a lot, and she's tried to reciprocate it now because it was so meaningful to her. But younger children, you're out shopping. It's usually a pretty stressful event. You're sitting there in the store.
We try to speed through it as fast as possible.
Absolutely.
Yeah, right.
Kids either running around your ankles, getting in other people's ways, hiding in clothing racks, and you can't find them, and it's just a stressful event. And I think someone noticed that, noticed my wife really struggling with 3 kids one day. And, the reactions you get from people really range to the truly peevish and annoying. People will be like, oh, looks like somebody needs a nap, really unhelpful comments. And so I think when you're out shopping with the kids, you're kind of braced for those sorts of moments. Like, people are going to react, and you're very self-conscious about
being judged on your parenting acumen.
So my wife tells a story about a woman who came up to her and just said, like, Mom, you're doing a great job. Like, keep your chin up, hang in there. You got this, kind of a thing. And it was really what she needed, to kind of carry her through that moment. And so, as a consequence of that, I think she tries to spot other people who are in a similar predicament, who are out in public and who are probably just struggling to get through their days, and just saying, like, you got this, keep it up.
Yeah. That is a great story, and I want to unpack that because there's so much there that happened, even though it was just a brief moment in time. It was an act of empathy from a complete stranger, somebody who noticed what was going on, could empathize with it and develop sympathy for your wife, and then was spurred to action to actually say, hey, you know what? I've been there. I know what I probably would have needed to hear at that point in time.
Yeah.
Let me go help this complete stranger. And she did that. And just that was so profound for your wife because it just probably set her at ease. It made her feel good about herself. And the a testament to how it impacted her is that now she's going and paying it forward.
Oh, yeah.
And that has become a memorable experience for her, even though it happened just in a brief span of time. And what I love best about it, it cost everybody involved nothing.
Yeah, that's what I was just about to say. I was like, what I like is when a lot of times we think about doing these acts of kindness, we think it's going to cost us time, money, somehow it's going to get in the way, right? And so we just think we don't need to, or we can't fit it into our schedule, but yet here this moment in time was able to create such a positive outcome.
Well, you mentioned you just said fitting it into our schedule, and hey, as a team we travel a lot, right? We're on the road a lot, and as it happens, we find ourselves in airports a lot, or just kind of in these holding places where we're just waiting. And
people watching.
Yeah, people watching, absolutely. It's good people watching. But airports are particularly stressful places. People are maybe trying to be on their best behavior, but the tensions are certainly high in those kinds of situations.
Palpable.
So there is ample opportunity, I think, in these kinds of environments where we're all just kind of white knuckling it to go one way or the other with this, right? You can either kind of just ignite that tinder keg that's ready to blow anyway, or you can kind of diffuse the tension with some of these just really easy things to say, like.
That is a great point, and I actually have an example of this. Very coincident that you, well, I don't believe in coincidences, but interesting that you brought it up just now. I was thinking back to when somebody performed a random act of kindness for me. And this was many, many years ago. I was flying somewhere to interview for something. I think it was like an internship or a job or something of that nature. And it went really well, but on my flight back, I got delayed at the airport. And I was stuck for something like 7-8 hours trying to get back home. And at this point, I was a poor college student. I had very little money, nothing in my bank account, just a few dollars cash on me. And if you've been in airports, you know that their food is exorbitantly expensive.
Yep.
And so I'm sitting there with this layover I had not anticipated, absolutely starving, in my suit, all done up, and just, absolutely famished. And it got to the point where I swallowed my pride and I started going around and asking people, hey, look, I know this is, really unorthodox, but I don't have any money on me. I'm stuck here. Could you please just give me a few bucks so I can go get a sandwich or a hot dog or something like that? And so many people, would just said no. And finally, so this is a two-parter, somebody at one of the fast food joints overheard me asking people for this, and she had me come over and just gave me a bag of chips, it was no big thing. And so I took it. I was like, thank you so much. I went and sat back down. And then one of the ladies who I had asked earlier came up and saw me eating, and I guess in her mind it was oh, I guess he's not going to go buy a airport beer with this or something like that.
Score some airport.
Yeah, and she emptied the contents of her wallet. It was $10 and some change or whatever, and I was able to actually go get some more substantive food. But that situation just happened over a decade ago. It's really stood out to me. And it reminds me to be kind and generous to people, especially in those types of environments.
Right.
And so that's something I've taken with me that I'll probably remember for the rest of my life. And literally it cost that woman $10 and a few seconds of her time.
Wow, Dr. Jerry, humble beginnings. Who knew?
Right?
Extremely
so
humble.
The man before us now.
Right.
Who knew he was scrounging for chips?
But
Good story.
All this to say that, we can have an indelible impact on other people that lasts not just for that moment in time, not just for that day, but literally for the rest of their lives because of the significance of that interaction. And I think sometimes that goes underappreciated. We think that, this random act of kindness is going to cost us so much. It's not going to be appreciated. And yeah, maybe holding the door open for somebody doesn't have that kind of impact. But you never know what people are going through and what kind of struggles they're having. And sometimes you really do impact them very strongly in just the smallest little things.
Well, let's just pretend for argument's sake that I believe everything that you're kind of spitting out right now, and that this might be something that benefits me and other people. And I want to get started. How do I start shaping my mindset? How do I get into this like habit of doing this on a regular basis?
So not to pass the buck, but in the 5 Minutes to Thrive, I wrote a couple weeks ago, there's a list of 101 different random acts of kindness.
Making it too easy for us.
Oh, I know. But they're concrete, they're objective, they're written behaviorally, like do this, take this, say this to somebody else. But I think if we're to try to boil it down to its fundamental components, it starts with empathy. So just observing the world around you and the people in it and trying to understand what it is that they're going through and what maybe they need from a social aspect. And your example that you gave with your wife, she needed somebody who could support her and reinforce her. And that's what the other woman noticed. And I think something as simple as that, if we are just aware and observant of the people around us, the little cues or clues to what kinds of actions, some kindnesses that maybe warrant in that situation are going to be pretty readily apparent.
I know for when I go out with my kids and stuff like that, they can say things, kids can say the craziest things out loud, right? And so one thing that I'm always trying to teach them is to view the world with compassion. And so we were at a restaurant and my son literally just was standing on his chair, like on his knees, and was just like, that guy is fat.
Oh, no.
And I was like, whoa. And so we had to like have this conversation. And so I believe that the acts of kindness can happen when you start viewing the world with compassion,
Bingo.
right? Understanding with the empathy, right? Like this person, that's not what this person needed to hear from a child, right?
Right.
Thankfully, he was good spirits about it, and I apologized 1,000 times, and then bought him a beer. But
And now he's got a good story.
yes, but you know, it's just realizing that it starts small. You know, like if you can get small or younger, right, it'll help through time.
I appreciate that because here, you know, my question, I recognize now the way I asked it. You know, it's easy, I think, to get wrapped around the axle about like, well, what would I do? What specifically would I do? And you've made that easy for us in giving us the list of behaviors. And here you guys are telling me, start with empathy, start with compassion.
Yeah.
And arguably, the world could probably use a lot more of both of those things. And if we failed somehow in our specific behavioral efforts, but we had more compassion or had more empathy, we'd probably be in a better place.
Because you could buy donuts for your coworkers in the morning. They'd probably be
Yeah,
appreciative.
why don't you guys ever do that?
I am not contributing to diabetes, so.
Touche.
But that's not necessarily meeting people's needs. I mean, yes, physiological needs. Yeah, you're giving them sustenance in the morning.
But is it sustenance?
Yeah, arguably.
I'm just not a big donut fan, sorry.
But there's so much more than
Think
that.
of them as resiliency rings.
Yeah, I watch
like that.
people eat a lot of resiliency rings, and it doesn't seem to help, so.
Sorry.
A little rabbit trail there. But if you're thinking of it more in terms of being compassionate, trying to figure out what is it your folks actually need during the day may give you a better cue as to what kind of acts of kindness are going to be best received. And what's cool about this is you'll see as you start to perform these, or at least try and make it part of your daily habit, like say, I'm going to help out or just be nice to one person today, whether they're random or not. That not only makes you feel good, but it starts to fill the atmosphere with positive emotions, and those get passed on and reciprocated. Emotions are extremely contagious. Fortunately, both the positive ones in addition to the negative ones. So if you put out there some of these positive emotions, gratitude, thankfulness, things of that nature, then eventually it's going to come back around. And even if it doesn't, you know, don't let that be the expectation. Just do it because you care about other people. And let that be its own reward.
Yeah, definitely. And if you're looking at it from, okay, do I want to do an act of kindness for a stranger, or would I want to do an act of kindness for maybe coworker, unit? We had an NCO come to me, and he had this really great idea and plan, and I can't wait to implement it.
Oh yeah,
yeah.
I love this.
And so it's the pay it forward, and I'm sure you've heard pay it forward, right? But really, what it is you just get a simple little piece of paper, card, whatever, and it just says like, hey, you've been identified. And here's a little gift, whatever it is, and then all you have to do in return is just pass it on, right? Pay it forward. And so you find something small. It could be a candy bar. It could be, you know, just a thank you note. I mean, it could just be like you're doing a great job, like a compliment. And then you encourage your unit to pay it forward, right? Do it to the next person. It's a random. And I think what that would do, though, is it would show that compassion and it would show that validation and appreciation within your work section.
And the virtue of having that card is you're allowing the cycle to continue. It doesn't really stop at one person. And they can choose to be anonymous if they want to. They don't have to identify themselves, or, you know, it may be awkward for some people to have that constructive conversation with another person, like just give them a random compliment. So this allows them to actually do it while being anonymous, which in some ways I would almost rather receive, because then I'm like, oh wow, there's somebody out there that really appreciates me. How nice, you know? I love that idea.
Make me paranoid.
Well,
right.
that's a personal problem. So how would a unit go about doing this, like implementing this plan?
I think anybody could just write up a real quick little note on a piece of paper like, hey, congratulations, you've been identified, and we want to show you we appreciate you. And this is for you, and we only ask that you do an act of kindness on the next person. And they pass it on, you know, and it would cost nothing. And it would just be a few minutes of time. It's not this elaborate thing. And then anybody can start it, from an airman all the way to leadership, you know.
To be cheesy, as Gandhi, or maybe it was Mother Teresa, said, be the change you want to see in the world.
Yeah.
Wow. I think you can't top that. Whoever we're going to attribute that to, I think we should probably close on that one.
That was a good one.
But in summary, I think we just show compassion, to try to empathize with, you know, your fellow human beings. Everybody's going through rough times, and it's not always easy to see. But when you see an opening, when you find an opening to do a random act of kindness, I want to encourage everybody to just jump on it and take advantage of it. And you know, as you continue to practice this, you know, over the prevailing days, weeks, you may notice a change not only in the people around you, but a change in yourself as well.
Awesome. Well, there it is, Airman. There's your charge to go out and change the world. Have a great week.
Thanks for listening to The Pillars.